Hi, everybody. It's the Week in the Tackle podcast, the podcast where we look back at the previous week in football and/or soccer, and tackle the things that we thought were interesting. I'm Tom Rennie. Alongside me, the bionic man himself, the $6 million individual. It is Brian Dunny Dunseth. How are you, mate? You all right? How's the hip?
$6 million or $6 individual? Either way, it's feeling great, man. It's
Good.
I've got a bag of ice on me right now. It's just sitting here trying to keep the swelling down. All the bruising's gone. I look like Frankenstein over my left hip, and I got in like 5 miles worth of walking yesterday. And today I'm officially 2 weeks out of surgery. So, Momberger, Tosh, Jared Dunn, you guys are amazing.
Can I ask you a question, though? And I speak on behalf of our producer, Tim Horsey, as well. Can you stop sending us photographs of your scar? Like, you sent me one the other day, like a couple of days after the recording, and I can't remember what I was doing. I was doing something where it wasn't an appropriate thing to look at. You know, like if someone shows you boxing highlights on TV and you just look at it at the moment where the guy's nose busts open. That's basically what happened here. And I basically saw your disgusting, horrible scar when I was trying to have my dinner. So if you could not do that moving forward, that'd be great for me.
Yeah, I got a quick surprise. Luca wants to say what's up. Hey, say what's up, Luca. You
Luca,
say what's
hello.
up, Rennie?
What's up, Rennie?
There you go. Very nice. That's the best thing any Dunseth has ever said on this show, right there. Just nailed it.
He said, "You're a smart little boy."
That's what I said. How gross is Dad's scar? Super
He
gross?
said, how gross is Daddy's scar on my hip?
Not gross.
Not gross. See, Rennie?
Not gross.
Not gross.
Yes.
He loves his dad.
Yeah, but
Right,
he's
get outta
grown
here,
up with
no.
you. He's grown up with you, so he's seen some disgusting things
Yeah,
during
true.
his life, I'm sure. She has
True.
a bathroom with you. Poor
Little man bagged 5 goals this last weekend. He's 6 years old. He's playing in the under-9 leagues, and the craziest part, he does the celebrations.
Oh,
He does the celebrations, Rennie, and it becomes kind of that weird thing where I'm just sitting in my chair looking down, and hopefully nobody starts staring at me like, whose effing kid is that, and why are they doing the effing celebration? At one point, he did and I was like, oh my God, I got to stop this. Stupid YouTube, stupid brothers.
he did. You Can't See Me, the John Cena, the John Cena thing.
Well, we watch a little WWE at this house every once in a while, and
The
he
concern
scored the
is,
goal.
because that was John Cena's a PG-13 era of WWE. You got to worry about whether he does the, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Am I right?
Yeah.
That's when you want to be
I'm here with you.
concerned. Yeah, I covered that up
but
because I don't know if we get banned on YouTube for showing that. We might, so I covered it.
But to your point, I refuse. I refuse your statement. I refuse your ask. I just flat out refuse because I think it's fun to send you those type of pictures. And it was just literally the stitches where they had kind of pulled the covering off the stitches, and you could see the scar, but it was also the bruising.
Yeah.
I look like a stuck pig, and that was the fun part because I just kind of timed it right around lunchtime, just so I was trying to figure out if I could preemptively strike or post-strike Tim Horsey's lunch. So I think I did it rather well in terms of timing.
It was like that bit in the first Rocky film where Rocky is just pounding on a cow carcass for local television. That's what it was like. Anyway, let's move on. This weekend, the big build-up was for Man City against Arsenal. The game itself was a bit of a damp squib. I want to know more broadly why you think this happened so many times in these big games, Danny. But let me just tell you this really brief story from watching the game because you'll enjoy this. So I couldn't go to Manchester for the game, mainly because Man City turned me down for a ticket. It's a pretty obvious reason, really. So I couldn't get one, and I could have made a fuss of it, but I thought, actually, no, I won't do it because for some reason, my wife's sister treats Easter like it's Christmas. I find it very strange. I'm not a religious person. I'm an atheist. I find it very strange, the whole thing, but I tolerate. So I go to this thing, and my brother-in-law's giant brothers are there. There's 4 brothers, and they're all like 6'7" or above. The one that's 6'5", they call him. Well, I can't say the word. They call him small. They say another more offensive word. I don't say it. It's not my family. But he's the small one at like 6'5", and the dad's there as well, who's giant. He's nearly 7 foot. And so we've had this giant Christmas dinner. We've had Christmas brunch, Christmas dinner, egg hunt, and it's like, right, we're all going to watch Man City Arsenal now. That okay? So the lads go into the front room to watch the game. We all had a giant Christmas dinner. The game is boring as it gets, right? And as the game is going on, no one's having a shot. You can just see a few people's heads are wobbling. A few people are doing the slow blinks. They're slow blinking. By the time we got to the 60th minute, I had 2 giant 6-foot men asleep on my left. I had 2 giant 6-foot men sleep on my right. and I had one giant 7-foot man asleep at my feet like a monumental Great Dane, all snoring at the highest possible level, whilst I was desperate to fall asleep, but I had to stay awake because I had to talk about this bloody game for a living. And my wife came in, was like, "Good game, is it?" And they were like, all woke up again. That's how boring it was. I had to sleep in the land of the giants watching it. Was it as boring as all that?
Well, I know really quick. I know that you're not a meat eater by any means. So
No.
was there like turkey? Was it ham? Like what was being
3 meats. It was ham, beef, and I think turkey. Ham, beef,
Okay.
and turkey. I'm not 100%. There was definitely a white meat, a brown meat, and a pink meat. So I assume that's
Okay.
what it was.
So
I
the
had
tryptophan. It was the
cauliflower
tryptophan.
cheese.
Okay.
And cauliflower cheese. But she did 9 vegetables. There was 9 vegetables and a mains of cauliflower cheese.
Okay.
So I was farting up a storm, let me tell you.
Well, good for you. Crop dust. Nothing wrong with crop dust and a bunch of 6'7" dudes in the same room. Where to start? I think first and foremost, we have to acknowledge that for Man City, the international break was very unlucky. You know, John Stones sat on the bench the entirety of the match. He was deemed good enough to make the bench, but not good enough to enter the game. Obviously, that would have had massive changes. Kyle Walker, unavailable too after picking up that injury for Gareth Southgate's England. So all of a sudden, Kovacic comes in, and you're starting to adjust what the back line looks. So two big players that I think on both sides of the ball have a really positive effect, right? Defensively, you know, Stones is kind of part of that breakup artistry alongside Rodri, and then Kyle Walker is, if not the fastest player in the Premier League, one of the fastest players in the Premier League, and a really good 1v1 defender. So then defensively, you think about the art of width and you think about the art of possession and movement and all of those things. So that's something to talk about. I'll placeholder that. For Mikel Arteta, I think we continue to learn that he doesn't really trust Zinchenko in certain matches. The fact that Kivior started this match and went, I think, 65, 67 minutes before Tomiyasu comes in. A little bit surprised that Gabby Jesus got to start on the left-hand side with Martinelli and Trossard, but I think that speaks more to Kai Havertz and kind of the role, this hybrid of a 9 that he's been playing, which arguably is his best position. It was arguably his best position at Chelsea after the departure of Olivier Giroud and a couple other players. So you think about tactics, you talk about shape, you got to talk about identity. I think the one thing for me, as I'm trying to analytically break this down, is Mikel Arteta had to be incredibly smart. He couldn't be as naive maybe as earlier matches at the Etihad where they got blown out. Because if you try to go head to head, if you try to play your style of football, if you try to be expansive, if you try to just play the quote unquote Arsenal way, this is a team that matches up extremely well against you. So what does he do? He becomes a little bit more dynamic defensively and becomes a little bit more of a transition team. Statistics will speak to that. I think it was like 70 something percent versus 20 something percent in terms of possession. I think shot wise, I think you should, for me, this is just my humble opinion as an analyst on broadcast. I think we do a disservice by not talking about corners, because corners, for me, indicate offensively you're putting the defenders in some really bad positions. Defensively, you can say that you're cutting down entry balls and defending the box well. So there's a yin and yang there. But ultimately, if you can stop Man City in a way that it's not about the shutout, but I think it's more about the single shot on goal. And obviously, the Erling Haaland at the back post and his preferred left foot and scuffing that chance becomes kind of a narrative and something to kind of speak to. But I think ultimately, the context of the game for me, I have to give credit to Arsenal. I have to give credit to Mikel Arteta, because this is not the game that's going to either win or lose them the Premier League title. This is the game where they've got to think about, in my humble opinion, if you would have gone to Arsenal fans and said, is a point good enough at the Etihad right now, this stage of the season? I think all the fans would have said, I put it in my back pocket, I walk away, I live to fight another day, and then we handle our business against all the other teams, something that they didn't do last season.
But if they do that, Danny, and I appreciate your point, and I've seen a lot of the regard for Arsenal's defensive performance here, but where are City going to drop further points? I can see Arsenal dropping further points. I always say this, that it's harder to win the league as a London team than teams that aren't, because for Chelsea and Tottenham coming up, it's the biggest game ever for those two teams. They would both absolutely love to be the team that cost Arsenal the Premier League title. Everything else looks pretty winnable, though Villa quite tough as well. Man United away is also one that Arsenal are going to find it very tough to win. Their rivalry going back 20 years is one that United will be keen to restoke. So you got all that going on. And it just made me think about the brilliant Liverpool Man City games the last 5, 6, 7 years, this Klopp Guardiola era. We spoke about it following the game at Anfield a couple of shows ago. And Jurgen Klopp doesn't do that. He might make some concession to the opponent, but in general, they go and play the Liverpool way. They try and force the issue. And sometimes they've been beaten, but they've been able to beat Manchester City. Arsenal, for me, to win the league, needed to be bolder and braver and win this game. And they could have done it in their kind of Spurs way and the way Chelsea got a draw recently, absorb, counter press. If Trossard squares to Martinelli and they win the game, it's a perfect performance. But if you're going to play this high wire, take the one chance when it comes strategy, if you don't take that chance, it just felt like a huge opportunity missed for Arsenal because, yeah, it's a great draw, but it's like handshakes all round. You don't win the Premier League against Man City and against this Liverpool by not playing your way in a game like this.
Yeah, I hear you. I definitely do because it's a DNA conversation, right? It's a bravado. It's an arrogance. It's how you identify how you play against every other team. But I just I just think that Mikel Arteta understood the size and the scope of the challenge. He set himself up in the best possible way to figure out a way to get points away from Man City. If you think about what was it, 5-0 last time the team went there. I thought Gabriel, who I'm not a huge fan of, I thought Saliba was fantastic. I thought their partnership was really, really solid. I think he did things to try to negate what Man City does extremely well. Obviously, he has insider knowledge, even though that's 2019. It's for the most part an evolution of players that have moved on since he was a part of Mikel Arteta's coaching staff. But yeah, I think there's a fine line between absolutely correct in what you're saying and realizing what the challenge is and what they have to do to maintain the pace. And at the end of the day, Tom, here's the brilliant part. You and I have been clamoring for someone to be able to be at the level of Man City. Now we have two teams that can be at the level of Man City. So this, in an odd way, is a sign of respect, but also a sign that Arsenal can compete. And for Arsenal to continue in this kind of momentum of years and now this kind of core group, I don't want to call it a generation, but this is most certainly a 2 to 4 to 5 year group of players that they have. And they're only going to strengthen because of this success and the continuity in Champions League football, that the kitty's going to become bigger. It's going to be stronger. It's London. It's Arsenal. All of a sudden, better players are going to be made available to them than they had in the past. This is a real chance for them to be a staple for legitimate contenders for Premier League title winners. But I understand what you're saying. I just think at times you got to be pragmatic and know who you are. And maybe that was one of those moments where Mikel Arteta said, I've learned my lessons previous. Let's try to do everything we can to make it difficult and see what we can get out of the game. And that led to a game that wasn't as wide open as maybe some expected.
Yeah. I want to go back to what you mentioned about Gabriel and Saliba at centre-half, who kept Erling Haaland very quiet in this game. It was evident that Gabriel was being told to get as tight as possible to Erling Haaland whenever it was pinged up to him, and talk about his not great hold-up play, something Roy Keane has now infamously labelled as the quality of a League Two player. What did you make to the way they defended against Erling Haaland and Haaland's performance? Because all we've had for 24, 48 hours now is memes kind of doing the rounds on the various social medias of Erling Haaland's trampoline-like control in the warm-up.
Yeah, listen, I think it was incredibly harsh what they're doing to him because let's not for a second recognize he's the best goal scorer in the Premier League since he's joined, coming over from Borussia Dortmund. Can his touch and his technical ability be better? Yeah, absolutely. It's an evolution. He's still I would say, a decently young player with regards to what his career has been so far. But Roy Keane would take him at Manchester United in a fucking heartbeat. Sorry, Tim. Let's not bullshit. Sorry, Tim. Anyway, around that one. Yeah, listen, I think what you've got two, when you talk about Saliba and Gabriel, you have two very, very, very physical center backs. Gabriel in particular. Gabriel in particular is the type of player that wants to grapple. He wants to make it as much of a fight between an individual player to make sure that he know or that you know as a striker that he's grabbing, tugging, he's going to be all over you. He's big, he's strong, he's lean, he's intelligent. He's got great ability to kind of read plays, build up plays, but then he'll make sure that he gets a piece of you. He gives you bumps off the ball. He's got the dark arts in his back pocket. He knows how to manipulate the opponent. And I think both he and Saliba did a very good job in terms of managing the spaces where he likes to operate and doing a really good job. How many times was there kind of that connectivity with the early entry ball? Erling Haaland lays the ball off and he does this kind of patented spin. And whether it was a two-handed shove to the hips or it's a hard little bump with like a hip check or a chicken wing, kind of offsetting his movement to kind of immediately kind of spin and get him behind. So yeah, they limited him to, I would say, maybe one of his most ineffective games at Man City. But this is not the first time where we've had this conversation when we talk about the kind of the big teams and Erling Haaland and when he's scoring goals and when he's not scoring goals and all of this stuff. He's a phenomenal player. I struggle to think of a single team in the Premier League that wouldn't immediately, if had the opportunity to sign him, that he wouldn't immediately be the number 9 for any of these teams in the Premier League.
But would he get a game for Plymouth?
No,
that's the question.
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't know.
Can't controllable. Not like those strikers at Plymouth. Are they even in League Two? I don't know. It felt right. I'm going with
League
it.
Two. Yeah, it's a League Two shout. Yeah.
Felt right. Listen, not much else to say on that game, so I want to ask you more broadly about data. I know that with your work at MLS, you get shoved a lot of data these days, and of course, when you're doing broadcasting these days, it's all about expected goals and pre-expected goals and pre-expected goals and all this sort of stuff. The data miners at Opta have now given Liverpool a 47% chance of being Premier League champions. Man City, I think, is 36%, with Arsenal around about 18 or something like that. I haven't got the numbers in front of me, but it's broadly that. They've given Liverpool the tag of favourites from this point moving forward. How much can Liverpool fans listening to this, mainly our producer, Mr. Tim Horsey, sweating profusely listening to this, not because of this, he's just a very sweaty man, but how much can they take some hope from that? Does that matter at all?
Yeah, I don't. To your point, yeah, I do have my issues with some of the data. For example, with expected goals, it doesn't take into consideration the dominant foot of a player, right? So expected goals with Lionel Messi on his left foot, it doesn't show a difference of expected goals when the shot is taken with his right foot. There's no differentiating factor in the data. That's one thing. The idea of difficult passes. What is a difficult pass? Are we playing with the inside of the foot, the outside of the foot? Is it a pivot and a spin? Is it a flick onto space, closing down defense? There's so many different anomalies in the conversation. To your point about this data, I would suggest it's probably strength of schedule. That's what I would assume is strength of schedule, and the amount of home games that teams have throughout the course of the season. But if you said to me right now, out of the 3 who I thought would probably have enough to hold on, I have a tough time looking at Liverpool and thinking that with the amount of substitutes that they have available on the offensive phase of play, whether you talk about Bradley or you talk about Kwanzaa, 2 young players that don't look anywhere out of their depth with regards to a starting 11 spot, and the benefit of being able to get out from underneath Fabinho and Jordan Henderson to Saudi Arabian money and bringing in and doing the business early with Szoboszlai, with McAllister, and then I don't think he's going to be the signing of the year, but he should be in the conversation for the price point where he came from with the performances from Endo. All of those to me suggest that yesterday on Counterattack, when we had to pick our 3, I chose Liverpool as my Premier League champion. So yeah, the crazy part is, as you make that face at me, it was kind of one of those situations where all 3 could win. I think that's the beauty of this. Like, literally,
you backing away from it now.
No,
back away now.
No, I'm saying that's the thing. None of us really know, but instinctually, I'm going with Liverpool with the way that this schedule plays itself out.
Do you, Brian Dunseth, take Liverpool to be a lawfully wedded Premier League champion? Yes, I do, but I can also take someone else.
It's true.
That's not how it works, I don't think, apart from at swingers' weddings. Do they have weddings? I don't know. Anyway, let's move on. I want to talk about the first game of the weekend because, well, firstly, I want to say if a game finishes
Here we go.
4-3,
Here we
and there
go.
were 2 penalties that shouldn't have been given, there was
Here we
one
go.
controversial goal for the other
Here we
team.
go.
Maybe if you do the nation's premiere highlights program, talk about some of it. At some point, I couldn't believe that Match of the Day, the premiere review show in England, didn't talk about one controversial decision from
Really?
Newcastle West Ham. They spoke about, God, Newcastle have conceded a lot of goals this season. Oh, well, move on. No.
Really?
Wild.
Do they do the referee? Do they do who does the referee show? With Howard Webb.
Michael Owen.
No. What broadcaster? Sorry.
Oh, it's a Premier League production, so they just do it in-house and give it away. So that's why it's such a tickle your tummy exercise.
Okay.
But I mean, either way, you don't need to have a rules expert or a referee to have a conversation about the controversial incidents in the game. I found that absolutely incredible. And look, right, I've got to talk about this. I'll talk about the Kalvin Phillips a bit later, and because I want to ask you about him because I'm just so baffled by.
I've got a
Phillips.
theory. I've got a theory.
I want to hear it, but I just want to talk about firstly the first penalty, which is given. It's a foul from Soufal and Anthony Gordon the same way the second penalty is. Gordon, very clever, smart cheater, one of the best cheaters in the game. What you do is you make the foul, you make it happen by your quickness of thought. And that's exactly what he did. So I think the first one's a penalty in terms of the foul, though the clip towards him, he's in an offside position, and Mavropanos is adjudged to have intentionally played the ball, which makes it a new phase of play.
Resets it. Yep.
On the same day, Sheffield United had a goal disallowed because a player, I think Vinny Souza, was in an offside position at one phase of play. They decided, no, it's all the same phase of play, and they disallowed the goal for the same reason this particular penalty was given. It's the same reason that goal was disallowed. Complete bollocks. Not consistent.
I've had this happen,
don't you?
I've had this happen to me. I had this happen when the law was first brought to the table and then applied and executed. I remember this. It was incredibly crystal clear. It was the San Jose Earthquakes. It was Chris Wondolowski, U.S. men's national team striker. He was behind Jamison Olave. As the ball's playing through, he's in an offside position. Jamison throws a leg out, misses the ball. The ball comes through to Chris. He's in an offside position by about a yard and a half, turns, pivots, scores. And I'm like, he's in an offside position. And the application of the law of the game was because Jamison Olave made any attempt to try to play the ball, it reset the play. Chris was in an onside position and then scored. So we get on the call the next week, and I don't know if it was Howard Webb at the time. I think it was pre-Howard Webb over a pro. But my whole thing was like, well, then from now on, if I'm a manager, I'm having my strikers sit on the backside of the defenders every single time. I'm going to have my players lump a ball up over the top. He's going to sit there. And the moment that the defenders turn around and start running towards the ball, he's in an onside. He plays brand new. He's considered effectively onside because the defenders moved. Why not? There's always an end around. There's always an end around in all of these. You can either justify the reason why he's onside or you justify the reason why he's offside. And it's complete bullshit. Sorry, Tim. It's all dependent upon who's the referee, who's the VAR, because it just flies in the face of common sense. Varzar, Howard Webb, do it now. Only guy in charge. He's the guy with equity. He's the one with the responsibility. And the ultimate judgment, whether he's right or wrong, comes down to his decisions. Put him in a box, make him watch all the games. Varzar.
He should be doing it because at this point, the consistency is so ridiculous. And I'll do some more in Villain of the Week later because this was a bad weekend for VR in general, not just in this particular game. But Gordon's offside. It should be given as offside. It's played to him in an offside position. There's the offside flag. It doesn't go up. And then it's adjudged to have Mavropanos tries to play the ball. It ricochets off Mavropanos. So I would argue, what does play the ball mean? And also phase of play. There's no definition of phase of play, which I've argued for loads of times previously. They don't define it. You've got to make an assessment at the time. So the first one is bollocks, but I'll accept it. You know, you can convince me otherwise. I don't feel it, but you can convince me. The second penalty, you can't convince me that that is a penalty, whatever you say, however you try to analyze it. If that challenge from Anthony Gordon was done on Kalvin Phillips in the Newcastle United penalty area, it's a penalty to West Ham United. I was watching the game in the green room, and obviously people are crowding around me because they love to see me lose my at West Ham games. Sorry, Tim. And I actually felt a sense of relief when I saw it because I thought, oh, Gordon's fouled him there. And you can see Gordon's cheating for a penalty because everyone cheats for a penalty. I'm not blaming him for doing it, but I'm also not going to back away from saying what it is. Everyone cheats. Everybody lies. Gordon, very smart, very clever, very devious. It is cheating, but it's sanctioned cheating. And he goes to win that penalty in the same way he won the first one. What happens is he jumps in front of Kalvin Phillips. He doesn't have control of the ball. He blocks Kalvin Phillips from kicking the ball forward, and that is a foul on Kalvin Phillips by Anthony Gordon. It isn't given in real time by the referee and his stupid 12-year-old boy's haircut, and so we have to wait for the VAR to think that's a clear and obvious error. And when you think of the things that haven't been deemed clear and obvious errors in recent weeks, and just from a West Ham perspective, obvious handballs haven't been deemed clear and obvious errors. One player for Sheffield United gave Jared Bowen a Roman Reigns-style spear in the penalty box. And that wasn't judged to be a clear and obvious error. There's no campaign against West Ham, by the way. It's just ranking competence, and these are the examples that are coming to me as I'm talking about West Ham. There is no campaign against anybody. They're just rubbish. But for then this to be given on review, and he goes over to see it on review, and then to give it. Now, I've seen basically only Newcastle fans, basically Alan Shearer and Newcastle fans would give it. And they say things like, if that was at the other end, you'd be screaming for it to be a penalty. And I wouldn't. You know why? Because it ain't. What happens is so clear. If Gordon got the ball jumping in front of Kalvin Phillips, he has control of the ball at that point, and he's fouled by Phillips. And I have loads of issues with how slow Kalvin Phillips is to get this ball away and how bad he was across the entire piece and flipping the bird at a fan and all that sort of stuff. But this particular incident is not his fault. He is clearing the ball. He is fouled by Gordon.
Never saw
maybe
him.
if he was a bit sharper, he might have put a bit of sauce on it, didn't he? If Phillips goes down spinning and moaning and complaining and being a little bitch about it like Anthony Gordon, he would have got the free kick that he should have got. It's incredible to me that they would review it and give it. How can they look at it on TV and clearly not see what's happened? Real time, I get it, because it's great acting and cheating by Gordon. But when you see he's not got that ball, and when anyone else on the field does a West Ham free kick, I just still, to this minute, can't believe it.
Yeah, so for me, let's start with Kalvin Phillips. Ball drops to his foot. He takes a touch with his left foot. He's got his back to goal. He's facing the top of his penalty area, and he's clearing the ball. There's nothing other than clearing the ball that's on his mind. He never sees Anthony Gordon. Credit to Anthony Gordon, because this is the wiggle around that every player can find in the game. He's not playing the ball. He is doing what attacking players are taught to do, which is put yourself between the opponent and the ball and see what you can get out of it. How many times, let's use it in a dribble, right? If Anthony Gordon was in a dribble and Kalvin Phillips was closing him down, what if Anthony Gordon would do is, if he felt the pressure coming from either side, he would literally put his body in between Kalvin Phillips and the ball and hope for a bump over, right? Hope for a kick, draw the foul, draw the set piece. He does the same exact thing, and credit to him because it worked, right? You're right. He put the sauce on it. But the problem that I have, and this is maybe me being sensitive as a former defender, a former center back, is that and this idea of intent and what is intent and can you use it, can you not use it in the competency of the decision. The reality is Kalvin Phillips has eyes on nothing other than clearing this ball or making the pass out of his 18-yard box. Anthony Gordon has not played the ball. He's played the man. And I think however we pull back this conversation to IFAB and the laws of the game and the verbiage in which they try to then justify the application of the law of the game into actual gameplay, this is a big end around. Because in no way, shape, or form should this be called a penalty on Kalvin Phillips or any other defender, because the attacking player does not make an attempt to play the ball. He's playing the man. And for me, there's not a chance in hell that should have been a penalty. There's not a chance in hell it should have not ever been reviewed. And there's not a chance in hell Rob Jones should have gone back on his initial decision by just using common sense and saying he's not playing the ball. He's playing Kalvin Phillips' ability to play the ball out of the 18-yard box. I was baffled by the decision. Take away your dismay and distrust of Kalvin Phillips in the game.
It's so concerning to me that you love winding me up and you agree with me. That's so concerning. That's how bad that decision
It was
was.
bad.
Dunny is just agreeing with me.
Rob Jones had a tough one. He
Yeah,
definitely had a tough one.
worse than his haircut that's banned in most primary schools across the
Did,
UK.
didn't Tottenham? Wasn't it Christmas time? Tottenham tried to make sure that he didn't do another game for the rest of the season.
Oh, you'd have to forgive me on that one. I'm
Yeah.
sure. I'm sure he's so bad that everyone thinks he's that bad. But that's the first time I've really noticed it.
Tough job.
Just briefly on Kalvin Phillips, I just would like your view on what's happening,
Hmm.
because he's obviously at this point, whatever he had in his bag of tricks, his ability to play football, that's gone. Whether he can get it back or not, I don't know. Lots of players have had it and lost it over the years for whatever reason. Injury, personal issues, age, whatever. Things catch up on you. Maybe he was playing for the right manager at one point and he's not played for the right manager since. I don't know what's happened to Kalvin Phillips, right? But what frustrates me is that he's cost West Ham, by my reckoning, 7 to 9 points. 2 of the games he started, he's been taken off at half time. He's been so bad. And yet he's probably the biggest earner at the club. They're paying huge wages to have him on loan from Man City and a big fee as well, with the view to sign him, which is not going to happen in a month of Sundays. I'm not sure he'll get a Premier League club, let alone a move to a top 10 team like West Ham in the summer. What I want to know is, what do you do now? Because David Moyes has to come out in the press as the manager and say, we're going to support him. Of course, he has to say that. But David Moyes has binned off a lot of people. He didn't like Said Benrahma. We knew that for a long time. And that's happened to a few players. If he don't like you, you're out. Max Cornet can't get a minute in a game. You don't like him so much.
Sebastian Haller. Yeah.
Haller's another great example. So you can't play Phillips because he's such a liability, a monumental liability. But Moyes pushed to sign him on that huge money. Yeah. Phillips has gone. I can't talk about his mental state. I don't like it when people talk about his mental state, because unless there's something I know about his mental health, what I know is he's on big money and he's not delivering. And if you do that in any other industry, there are consequences, and the consequences aren't give him a hug. So unless I find out something I don't know, I just don't have a great deal of time for that. He's come in and he's not doing his job. That's the key element here. And then, of course, he has so little composure right now, Kalvin Phillips, on the field, that off the field, he can't even get on a bus without flipping the bird to a fan. He can't even keep his composure getting on a bus. Whatever we think about people waiting for players to call them useless or whatever, I've got no time for that at all. What happens next, Daddy?
He goes back to Leeds United. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. That's the only thing.
What about more short term than that? We've got 2 months of the season left, and he's one of 14 players who can actually play for West Ham.
Yeah, so I thought it was pretty interesting watching your social and watching a bunch of West Ham socials, just talking about at this point, and this is the complication, right? You have a manager that pushed for a player that cost so much money that you thought could immediately help bolster the midfield in this run up to the end of the season, would help you continue to climb the table, whatever the European calendar looked like for the club internationally. Alongside the domestic campaign, he would make the team better. It just hasn't worked. It just hasn't worked. It's a player that, you're right, the fitness isn't the issue. It's the form and the confidence that's the issue. He looks nowhere near the player he was at Leeds United in the build up to the move at Man City. Whatever's transpired over the time has obviously hurt him. You always wonder, and this is something that I've always kept in my back pocket to keep an eye on when a player moves to another club on loan. Does he look at it as an opportunity and a quote unquote promotion, or does he look at it as a demotion and he's been demoted to a lesser team? And then it's just like, oh, dude, I'm only going to be here for 6 months. I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. I'm pissed off that I didn't get my opportunity. Like, what am I doing? So, and I'm not suggesting this is the issue, but I'm absolutely suggesting that it's real, because I know from experience of players that I've played with that have been asked to go on loan to get a couple games, sharpness, fitness. I'm like, what the man? Sorry, Tim. Like, I don't want to do this. Like, that team sucks. Like, I don't want to play for that team. In their mind, they look at it as they're better than what that experience or that opportunity is. And that is just to get a game, get fitness, to get sharpness to play. So I'm not trying to suggest it's a pride element for Kalvin Phillips, but certainly something is completely different than the player that he was at Leeds United. So shut him down. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think David Moyes' ego would allow him to acknowledge that he's made a mistake or that he's part of the mistake of bringing him in. I don't know if it's a mistake, but it's certainly, to your point, you've been in a situation where Moyes has relied on a player that hasn't come up with the goods. and has not proven that he's better than the players that are already on the field. He's better than the players already in the squad. So I don't think they shut him down. I don't think ego allows it, but for the player himself, this has obviously not been the move that's been hoped for in any way, shape, or form by anyone.
I just hope we don't.
Involved.
I just hope we don't see him play again.
You
I think
will.
that's the main thing.
You will. Too much time, man. Too many games.
I just think for everyone involved, he is so, and he has actually got quite a lot of support from the fan base. Actually, everyone wanted him to do well, but at this point, he's tanking the season.
I love the finger, though. I'm fine with the finger. Like if
Yeah.
if you are going to give a professional athlete like that type of stick, then given the bird, totally here for it.
Part of the $100,000 a week is to keep your composure with the fans, whatever they say to you. That's part of the deal. And he couldn't even do that.
I love
Useless.
it.
Right, heroes and villains. Danny, who's your hero from the last weekend of football?
I was going to say Kalvin Phillips was my hero, but I'm not going to do it. I was holding it in my back pocket just to see if you brought him up or not. No, you know who my hero is? My hero is Erik ten Hag. My hero is Erik ten Hag this week because for the first time, I've had an issue with some of these Erik ten Hag post-game pressers. I've told you on many occasions where he talks about how great the team played and how much control the team had and how many chances they generated. And for him to flat out say they weren't good enough at Brentford, I was like, what? Did my eyes just tell me that I was in agreement with something that Erik ten Hag said? This season, they were devoid of ideas. They were miserable. They lacked identity. They had nothing. They were outcompeted, outplayed. And I thought it was almost a travesty that Brentford only walked away with 1 point. The fact that they almost walked away with 0 points after Mason. Like only Manchester United could ruin a Mason Mount moment after the way that this season has played itself out. And he gets the goal in the 90th +3. Of course, no one's going to be marking Ayer at the top of the penalty spot with a second left in the match. Why would anyone track a midfielder unmarked at the penalty area for a cutback ball that leaves everybody stranded? I get there's so many different circumstances at play for Manchester United, but my hero is that Erik ten Hag. I finally agree with what you said in your post-match pressure.
I was going to say Christopher Ayer was my hero of the week because if Man United had won that game, it would have been just the most tragic robbery of any game I think I've seen in such a long time. Some data from it. 85 touches Brentford had in the Man United penalty area. There are some games where teams only have like 100 passes. If they never see the ball against one of the big teams. 85 times they touched it in United's box. They had 31 shots on goal, the highest recorded in the 21 years they've been recording such things.
Onana was good, though. Onana was good. Onana was good.
That's true. He can make saves. That is true. But then David De Gea could make saves, and you already had him.
Yeah, true.
Did you see him on holiday this week, getting sunburned, still not playing? Is he ever going to play? He's not going to play, is he?
It's the weirdest thing, man.
So weird.
I just wonder, that 350 a week that he was on, allegedly. I wonder what the number is for him to start his car, to get back and play. I know the man got married in the off season. Maybe he just likes family life. Maybe he likes just being home, but that's too good of a player at that stage of his career to walk away. Come on over to the States, man. If you don't want to play over in Europe, come over to the States.
Yeah, it's working out well for Hugo Lloris, isn't it? That's going well.
Awkward.
Yeesh. So I can't do Brentford because you've kind of done that game. So I'll do Burnley as my hero of the week because they got just one of the worst decisions. This weekend was a bad weekend for VAR. The West Ham one we've mentioned, but this was diabolical. The sending off of the fullback Assignon running near Mikhailo Mudryk.
Nothing wrong. Yeah.
He's just near him. Like, he doesn't even, his arm kind of brushes him, but it's kind of Mudryk because he's close by, lifts the fullback's arm running by him. He doesn't grab him. He doesn't foul him. There's hardly any contact.
Sitting on the yellow. He knew what he was doing. He knew defensively he was sitting on the yellow in that situation.
It's just ridiculous that they would
I love
give
Vincent Kompany too. I love that Vincent Kompany.
Do you?
Well, no, I love that Vincent Kompany came out in the manner in which he was talking about every single weekend, the lack of consistency with similar calls in the Premier League. It is diabolical that you can have so many, and again, there's no like for like. It's never 100% the exact same situation with the exact same call, but there's so many circumstances that are so similar that you literally watch one game and it's one thing, and you watch another game and it's almost the exact same play, and it's a completely different opposite decision that's been made. And I think that's why the scrutiny is so large over the referees right now, is because every single weekend, we're talking about multiple circumstances in which players have been sent off or penalties have been deciding games, that the eyeball test doesn't match up with what we're seeing and what we're being told and justifying previous similar situations by referees and those around kind of the refereeing core.
It's incredible to me. Just looking at this weekend, and Rob Jones, by the way, we spoke about earlier on, he was involved in the Willy Bolly sending off for Nottingham Forest in Nuno's second or third game, where they said, we just can't have this guy anymore. He's bloody useless. And they were right. What annoys me about it, and you could throw in one or two other decisions from this weekend as well, but the Burnley one and the West Ham one really stick out to me. Actually, it was Everton Bournemouth was the other one. Calvert-Lewin clearly found they don't give it. What annoys me is there's this narrative of, oh, VAR sucking the life out of the game. And you always get people calling in saying that. And it's not true, but it's a cliche that's got to be, people have grabbed it and they're running with it now. That isn't sucking the life out of the game. I don't agree with that assessment. And I think it's just a bit basic bitch thing to say. What's happened is, I can't believe, and I think people can't believe, people are watching stuff back on TV and getting it wrong. Like, I understand it when you get it wrong in real life. But to watch back Burnley Everton, Burnley Chelsea, to watch back West Ham Newcastle, and to watch back Everton Bournemouth, these three incidents on a telly in a nice serene office environment in West London, to look at it and go, the right answer is A, but B? Yeah. Like, that's the bit I don't get it. Some things are arguable and some things are not. And when an inarguable thing happens and they don't correct it, that's the bit that just I still don't get it. Listen, villain. Who's your villain of the week?
Are you ready for my dad joke?
Yeah.
They're a Klassiker. More like, der Janiker.
Oh, that was a real dad joke.
It didn't work. No, this thing was.
I mean, it didn't work, but a dad joke's supposed to work.
Yeah, it's a good point. I got booed. I went with Bayern Munich losing at home to Borussia Dortmund. What was it? The first time in the last 12 games. Bayern official. Well, I know. Let me. Xabi Alonso and Bayer Leverkusen are now 13 points clear. 13 points clear, top of the Bundesliga. So
1-0 down again in the 88th minute, 87th minute, 1-2-1.
It's crazy. So when context, we talk about Man City have a stranglehold on the Premier League. We used to be talking about Juve having a stranglehold on Serie A. Now we're seeing the end of the stranglehold for Bayern Munich on the Bundesliga. Quick little side note. I know Alphonso Davies is linked with Real Madrid. Please, baby Jesus, bring him to Manchester United. Please, baby Jesus, bring him to Manchester United. But not only him, Joshua Kimmich. Any of these players with 2 years left on their deal are literally looking at the hierarchy and those involved in Bayern Munich. And I know everything is kind of transpired and changed and everything's starting to settle in, but you still think about those big names and everybody that's involved. It's a really cult of personality with regards to Bayern Munich. They got to get this next appointment right. They have to get the next appointment right. Thomas Tuchel, he's going out with guns ablazing in his own mind, playing Eric Dyer at center back and leaving some really good players on the bench. But what was the players? Oh, you ready for the short list of what I heard for Bayern Munich today?
Go on.
Obviously, De Zerbi. 12 to 14 million is the buyout, if that makes sense. We obviously heard his quotes with regards to 2 years left on his contract and a conversation with Tony Bloom and what that looks like, which isn't a lot of money. Julian Nagelsmann's deal, allegedly with Germany, is up after the Euros. Could they go back to Nagelsmann?
Can't see Bayern swallowing their pride like that. I can't see it.
You ready for the last one? You ready for the last one?
Go on.
Ralf Rangnick.
Shut the front door.
Ralf Rangnick, allegedly a part of that.
Was he now Austria? Is he Austria's
head coach doing a great job? Yeah, he's doing a great job. Doing a great job. Remember, Ralf Rangnick has quite the ethos and the equity earned from his time over in the Bundesliga. There's no love. There's no respect. Every single Englishman, anytime you bring up Ralf Rangnick, you guys have zero respect for the man. He was everything he said.
It was a joke here.
He was right, but he was right. Like, as you look back, he's been right about everything.
We can all make the fucking diagnosis. Sorry, Tim. You can all see it. But repairing it was his responsibility, not mine.
Yeah. He was good.
He had agency.
He was good with the scalpel. He opened up the chest. He talked about the open heart surgery. He didn't say he wasn't going to staple you back up. He wasn't going to stitch you back up.
If telling football clubs what they were doing wrong was all you needed to be a manager, I could take over any club in the world. Briefly, my villain of the week is Sean Dyche.
Dyche? Why?
because they haven't won a game since December, I think 16th now, Everton. It's April 2nd as we record the program. 0 wins, 5 draws, 7 defeats in that time, 12 without a win. And you watch them. And I don't quite buy into the argument of they're a dinosaur or their time has gone. I don't quite buy into it because I think defensive play will come back in fashion at some point soon. And I do think good defense is still respected, though I'm delighted the football's become a more offensive game in recent sort of years. But look at kind of Arsenal's defensive performance or Van Dijk over the last few years. There's still a lot of love to love about being a good defensive team. But his offensive play, it's so basic. It is exactly what we used to do when I played in the Chelmsford League under 12s. Like, number one, get the wingers.
Shout out.
Yes. Emblem Champions Division 2, 1998. But you used to run as fast down the left wing as you possibly could. And if you could get block crossing it and won a corner, I go to the back stick and try and head it home as one of the tallest players on the team. Me and the other centre half would do that. And if not, you'd cross it and you'd have two big boys in the centre of the penalty area who would try and knock it to each other and then kick it towards goal as fast as possible. Here endeth the tactics.
Havoc.
And look, again, these conversations go on about if it's effective, great, as long as you win. But if you haven't won in 12 and all you're doing is trying to find James Tarkowski with a deep corner, or that's it, I don't know. I just think that actual time has passed.
It might have. But the brilliant news for Everton, and by the way, you think about with the deduction, they'd still be sitting on 35 points. So they'd be above Crystal Palace, but below Bournemouth had they not had that deduction. Yeah, they're safe. Are they safe? Maybe not safe. Luton Town sitting on 22 points. I think they'll be okay. It's Everton, right? They hold on by the skin of their teeth. They live to fight another day. They're still going to have issues. This 777 takeover is taking so long. Understandably why. I don't know if they're the right group. Only they'll know if they're the right group.
You know.
I don't. You know. I don't know. But I don't know, but I don't feel great about it.
Doesn't look good,
everything. Yeah, based on everything. Hopefully they stay in the Premier League. Hopefully they get inside the new building. Hopefully that generation of funds maybe changes where they're at with regards to the 3-year plan of profit and sustainability. But yeah, they got to get this together quickly. They got to. But by the way, sorry, Tim. Just when I thought that Neto and that disastrous goalkeeping situation with Beto scoring that goal, but did you see Seamus Coleman when the ball comes in and Tarkowski hip checks, Brathwaite kind of ball goes through the 6. Air Jordan stuck to his line, and Seamus Coleman ball comes in, hits him in the thigh bone, goes past his own goalkeeper, and he's just like, "You motherfuckers!" Sorry, Tim. What the fuck? Sorry, Tim. And then just walks away in absolute dismay and disgust. He kept looking back too, like he's walking, got his head down, looking back at the penalty spot, looking back at the 6-yard box, and just couldn't believe that they gave that point away.
Right at the end, we dropped into Sorry Tim, so Tim could do some work at the end of today's program.
He deserves
and we are
to.
out. Oh, he does.
Yeah.
F off. Sorry, Tim. We are out of time for today's Week in the Tackle. Thank you to Brian, Dunny, Dunseth. I've been Tom Rennie. Tim Horsey produced the program. If you listen to the program as a podcast, you can watch it in full on both Spotify and YouTube. And if you're watching us on Spotify and YouTube, hello, try downloading us a podcast as well. Listen to us on your dog walk or something. That'd be nice. Right. See you next week.